Okay, hello everybody. Um, Welcome to another webinar. Um, I'm Shlomo and I'm the CEO of China Business Webinars and eBusiness Chinese, and I'm happy to open an additional webinar. I see people coming again and again and to the webinars, and it's really great having a community around this, and it really feels wonderful. David Dayton is our guest speaker for today. And he'll be speaking about what you need to know before coming to do business in China. I reviewed the presentation right before, and it's really interesting, so I promise you it's going to be good. David Dayton is the owner and manager of Silk Road International. David has nearly 20 years experience working in and with Asia, and he leads SRI from their Shenzhen, China office. Before China, David was based in Bangkok, Thailand, and in Taiwan before that. David is a regular presenter for Global Sources new buyer training seminars in Shanghai and in Hong Kong, and has also spoken for Global Sources Supplier Education Program. David has been published in Eurobiz magazine and numerous other trade and online publications. He has also been interviewed by CBS Evening News, 60 Minutes, and BBC, Market Watch, and by National Public Radio on China-related issues. David has a master's degree in Southeast Asian cultural anthropology, focusing on comparative Chinese and Thai corporate cultures, and a BA in International Relations and East Asian History. David has worked as a consultant manager, trainer, and a translator on both sides of the Pacific, and he's fluent on both Thai and Mandarin. And I'm going to make now David here is the system of the presenter. You'll see his screen and we'll start the presentation. So David, you're on.
All right, thanks so much. Let me set up the right screen so that you can see the presentation, and we'll be good to go. Shlomo, thanks for the opportunity to speak. Welcome to everyone, whether it's good evening to you or good morning. Nice to have you here. As was said at the very beginning there, I hope that you'll participate by asking questions. We'll definitely watch for your questions and answer those as we go along, and I'll have a few questions for you, the audience, as well. So feel free to participate as much as you can, particularly if you've got some questions about your specific situation that may be helpful to others if we address during the presentation. Shlomo gave a good introduction for myself. I've had a few decades of experience in Asia now. Also, Silk Road has been in China specifically since 2002, and prior to that, we were in Thailand. That's where we initially started. But SRI focuses particularly on finding clients the appropriate factories and making sure that we have all the logistics worked out and we have all of the appropriate facilities and other services lined up and coordinated, QC, logistics, independent testing, and whatnot. And we do that for clients that basically don't have their own office or don't have a physical presence in Asia, can't be there on a regular basis. If you'd like more information about Silk Road or myself, what we do or how we may be able to help you, please look us up online. Also, you're welcome to email me directly and ask me any questions about your specific situation or about some difficulties or problems, or indeed even about what it's like living or working in China. I'd be glad to help. Okay, with that out of the way, let's move into some of the specifics on exactly what we'll be looking at today. We'll be looking at a number of topic areas in helping you prepare to move to China. First would be location. Where to move makes a big difference in China, as China is a large country, obviously, but the differences in the places and the areas of China are significant. Secondly, we'll be talking about some of the legal and business culture that makes things a little bit different, particularly contracts and negotiations, and how we in the West may see them versus how they are used and interpreted in China. Thirdly, we'll be talking about some shared experiences that may or may not be the same. While we are all working with folks that have MBAs or MBAs and a high level of education in China on a regular basis with suppliers or with bosses, with co-workers or whatnot in different Chinese businesses or with different Chinese factories, just because we both have an MBA or just because we both have international business experience does not mean that we have the same experiences. So we'll try to define a little bit about what's different about the similarities. Next, we'll be talking about some of the things that make China business specifically unique to China. And one of those things is that it's very, very personal. And so how you resolve concerns, whether it's with coworkers or employers or suppliers, there are some specific things that you need to understand to be very successful at that, or to not be a failure at managing personal relationships in a business context. Finally, we'll talk about some practical things that everybody can do to help make the business experience in China a little bit more enjoyable as well as successful. And a couple of examples of when things go wrong. So if you've got any questions, I'll have a list of resources at the end, and like I said, feel free to answer questions or ask questions to me throughout the presentation today. Lastly, now that we know what we are going to be discussing, we need to cover one slide very quickly about what we will not be discussing. This will not be a presentation about some of the more smaller cultural items, food, populations, Taiwan, shopping, taxis, how to give business cards back and forth, how to get on a train, how to go to a trade show, drinking games, putting your children in school. All of those things may be important and all of those things may be necessary at some point, but this isn't the presentation for that. If you are specifically looking for training on how to move to and adjust to life in China, or if you're going to be bringing a family to China, SRI has a different presentation for individuals that is focused specifically on family and moving and other logistical concerns that may not necessarily be specifically business related. So if you'd like some information about that, again, you're welcome to contact me later. All right, probably the number one question that I get asked when I fly back and forth to the United States and China on a regular basis is people on the plane or in the airport or family or friends or whomever ask me, so what's China really like? And over the years, I've just had a million different answers for people, and I finally realized that probably the correct answer, at least from my situation and from my perspective, is to ask them the question, well, which China are you talking about? And the reality is most people that have not ever been to China don't get that question. But if you've been there, you understand. The east coast of China is significantly more developed than anywhere else in China, the west coast or the western part of China or the interior of China. And what that means for business people is that not only is the infrastructure different, and the buildings, of course, are significantly newer and more modern, but that business resources are significantly more developed, that supply chains are significantly deeper. Living standards are obviously much higher. International experience, meaning the experience that the Chinese have had with international business or with foreigners, is significantly higher than it is. Language resources are more available to individuals. Education, trade shows, government and security, all of these types of things are significantly different on the East Coast cities. And when we're talking about East Coast, we're talking about the big cities that most people have heard of: Beijing, Tianjin, Qingdao, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, of course Hong Kong, and maybe even Fujian province in there. So those are the areas that are significantly different, and that will make a huge difference in choosing where to live and how successful your business can be. Not that there aren't options inland, but that there are physical differences that make the business experience different by going to the East Coast versus the interior of China. So the other part of China, really the other half of China, and really the majority of the people that are living in China are living in either in the central or the interior or western part of China. And while there are significant opportunities available in those areas, and there are some indeed large cities that are just as developed as some of the cities on the East Coast, there's still some significant physical differences. Part of the fact is that while there are some good cities, Chongqing, Chengdu, Xi'an being three primary examples of cities that have received massive amounts of investment from the federal government and do have quite a bit of foreign experience. Those cities literally are islands in the middle of agriculture and poverty and the rural parts of China. What that means for business is that you'll have a significantly more difficult time getting product out of those cities or even raw materials into those cities to do production. If you're moving there for some other type of business where you'll be an employee in the business, what it means is that there's going to be a limited amount of international experience in those locations. And while that's changing quickly, a lot of people are returning back closer to their homes from years of work in the East Coast cities. There is still a significant gap in experience, say even in Chongqing or Chengdu versus Shenzhen, Guangzhou, or Shanghai. The wages are lower, of course. The supply chains, though, are also significantly more shallow than they are on the East Coast. That means that you're going to have to add additional production times onto plans for production on the East Coast, not just transportation and logistical times. Because there's limited amounts of business resources, or there is limited amounts of business resources specifically because there's not as much business experience in these cities. And so while there's incredible opportunities to go and set up and start and work and take advantage of the low wages in the new areas and the government incentives to be there, there's definitely some costs involved with those advantages. Let me give you a quick example. I lived in Chongqing for just over a year, and while it was a huge city, larger than Shenzhen, where I live now, the development is at least 10 years behind. Shenzhen, of course, was the first special economic zone in China, and so it opened up to the West and to foreign direct investment from the outside in 1981. Chongqing has not had that opportunity and really did not get the full backing of the federal government in China and lots of investment dollars until the early aughts, until this decade. And so there's at least, even though there was some investment and some experience there in the 90s, there's at least 20 years difference in terms of infrastructure, in terms of professional experience, in terms of outside interaction with the West when you compare Chongqing and Shenzhen, even though Chongqing is a larger city and may, because of current government investment, have some newer facilities than even Shenzhen does. So in general, what you have to be aware of is that there's going to be a lack of middle management anywhere outside of the largest cities. Of course, there's a huge variety in the different types of suppliers and the different levels of quality that you'll be getting across the country, but in general, recognize that as you go further inland, it's going to be more and more difficult to get the types of experience and the level of quality or the level of professionalism that you're used to. Remember that while everything is possible in China, the further you move inland, even simple things can be more and more difficult. And that's true on the East Coast as well, particularly if you're going to be starting a brand new service or you're bringing a brand new enterprise into China that hasn't been done or people have not had experience with before. Again, something to remember is that while your buyers or your employers or your coworkers or your suppliers may have an iPhone and they may have a brand new car and they may have an MBA, they're 15 or 20 years behind you in terms of experience or in terms of cultural associations with those types of things. We've hired college graduates, for example, in our office that have never been in a private car until they were hired working for our company. Taxis, buses, of course, but never a personal automobile. So we'll get into more of the individual levels of that later. But remember that China is a developing country. It's developed incredibly fast over the last 20 years, but it is just that. It is still a developing country. Now, a couple of questions before we move on to some of the things about paper and about contracts and about working with individual Chinese. How many in the audience have been to, have already been to or are right now in China? It looks like a number of people have been. And how many people are specifically concerned about IP and development and protecting that IP when working in China? Again, this is a significant concern for a number of people, particularly folks that are moving and working into China. And so let's go there now and talk about some of those options and opportunities.